The setting sun bathed the rolling hills in golden light, as a gentle breeze carried the fragrance of pine and jasmine. Thomas ascended a winding dirt path, his footsteps slow and deliberate. At the crest of the hill stood an ancient monastery, its wooden doors slightly ajar, inviting those in search of wisdom and tranquility. Thomas, a man in his late 50s, carried the burdens of life's disappointments. His once promising career had veered off course, his relationships had grown distant, and his faith in people had waned. He had not come seeking enlightenment, but rather answers about human nature and the troubling prevalence of selfishness, cruelty, and deceit. Who, he wondered, was truly deserving of respect? As he stepped into the courtyard, he saw an elderly monk seated quietly on a wooden bench, sipping tea. The monk's robes were plain, his expression serene, and his eyes reflected the depth of decades of wisdom. Looking up, he met Thomas's gaze and offered a warm smile. "You have traveled far," the monk said, his voice gentle as the wind. Thomas exhaled deeply. "I don't know where else to go. I feel lost. I've spent my whole life trying to be a good person, yet I see those undeserving of respect thriving. It makes me question, who is truly worthy of respect, and who is not?" The monk carefully set down his teacup, regarding Thomas thoughtfully before motioning for him to sit. An important question. Respect is a precious gift, but not everyone is worthy of it. Perhaps, rather than asking who deserves your respect, you should first understand who does not. Thomas furrowed his brow. "What do you mean?" The monk's knowing smile deepened. "Let me share a story with you. A story about 7 qualities unworthy of respect. Listen closely, and you may find the answers you seek." Thomas shifted on the wooden bench, eager yet uncertain. The air around them was calm, disturbed only by the occasional rustling of leaves. A sense of quiet reverence filled the space, as if the universe itself was waiting for the monk's words. "Long ago," the monk began, "a wise teacher was once asked the very question you bring today. He too had seen the world's injustices, and questioned why the dishonest and cruel seemed to prosper. So, he gathered his disciples and told them of the 7 qualities one must never respect." Thomas leaned forward slightly, his curiosity piqued. He had spent years disillusioned, watching those who lied and cheated rise, while those with integrity struggled. Now, he might finally find clarity. The monk sipped his tea once more before continuing. "Each of these qualities corrupts the soul, distances one from true wisdom, and creates suffering, not just for the individual, but for those around them. And so, my friend, let us begin this journey of understanding together." The monk took a deep breath and began. "The first quality that should never be respected is arrogance. Arrogance blinds a person to their own flaws, making them believe they are superior to others. It creates a barrier between them and wisdom, for they refuse to listen, learn, or accept that they might be wrong." He paused, looking at Thomas, who nodded in agreement. "I have seen this many times," Thomas admitted. "People who believe they know everything, who refuse to consider other perspectives. It is frustrating and isolating." The monk smiled. "Indeed, arrogance fosters isolation. People who are arrogant push others away, for they see no value in different viewpoints. They lack humility, and without humility, growth is impossible. Wisdom comes from acknowledging that we are always students in life." He continued. "There was once a scholar, known for his knowledge, but also for his arrogance. He would dismiss others, refusing to hear any perspective but his own. One day he visited a master seeking further wisdom. The master poured him tea, but kept pouring until the cup overflowed. The scholar protested, "The cup is full, no more can be added." The master smiled and said, "Like this cup, your mind is full of your own opinions. How can you learn anything new if you refuse to make space for it?" Thomas listened intently, reflecting on the story. So arrogance prevents us from learning? Yes, the monk replied, and it prevents meaningful connections with others. When one believes they are above others, they miss the opportunity to learn from them. Arrogance does not inspire respect. It breeds resentment, the monk continued. Arrogance is often rooted in insecurity. Those who feel the need to prove their superiority are often hiding their own doubts. True confidence does not require belittling others. Instead, it is shown through humility and the willingness to listen and grow. He sipped his tea before continuing. Imagine a great tree standing tall, its branches stretching high into the sky. If the tree does not bend with the wind, it will eventually break. But the tree that sways, that humbles itself to nature's forces, will stand strong through any storm. Thomas nodded, absorbing the lesson. So true strength lies in humility, not in arrogance. The monk smiled. Exactly. A person who is humble earns the respect of others because they show respect in return. They acknowledge that wisdom is a shared journey, not a solitary conquest. Remember, arrogance isolates, but humility connects. Thomas sat in silence for a moment, reflecting. He had encountered many people who had let their arrogance drive others away, and he saw now how it had prevented them from truly growing. I understand now, Thomas said. To be respected, one must first be humble. The monk nodded. Yes, and now let us discuss the second quality, dishonesty. The monk folded his hands and gazed at Thomas. The second quality that does not deserve respect is dishonesty, he said. Deception corrodes trust and shatters the foundation of meaningful relationships. A dishonest person may gain temporary advantage, but in the end, they are left with nothing but isolation and regret. Thomas sighed. I have met many dishonest people in my life. Some lie to get ahead, others twist the truth to avoid responsibility. It's frustrating to see them succeed while honest people struggle. The monk nodded knowingly. Their success is fleeting. Let me tell you a story. Once, in a small village, there was a merchant named Liang who was known for his sharp business tactics. He would sell inferior goods at high prices, exaggerating their value and making false promises to customers. At first, his wealth grew, and many admired his success. But over time, the villagers began to realize that his words could not be trusted. They stopped buying from him and his fortune dwindled. Eventually, no one in the village would do business with him, and he was forced to leave in shame. Liang had built his success on dishonesty, but in the end, he lost everything. Thomas considered this. So even if dishonesty brings success, it never lasts? Precisely, the monk said. Honesty is the foundation of trust, and without trust, all relationships, whether personal or professional, crumble. Even when no one is watching, integrity matters. A person's reputation is like a delicate vase. Once cracked, it is nearly impossible to mend. The monk took a sip of tea before continuing. There is an old saying, a liar needs a good memory. Dishonest people must constantly weave new lies to cover the old ones. But an honest person carries no such burden. They walk through life with a light heart, knowing they owe no one deception. Thomas nodded. I've seen this happen. Lies always catch up to people in the end. But what about small lies? White lies? Are they just as harmful? The monk smiled. Not all dishonesty is malicious, but even small lies can lead to bigger ones. When we justify deception, we slowly erode our own moral compass. The truth, even when difficult, strengthens character and builds trust. Thomas sat in deep thought. So honesty isn't just about being truthful to others. It's about being truthful to ourselves. Yes, the monk said. A person who deceives others also deceives themselves. They live in a world built on illusion, constantly fearing the moment it will collapse. But an honest life is a peaceful life. Thomas exhaled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. I see now. Dishonesty may bring temporary gain, but in the end, it leaves us with nothing. The monk nodded. Now, let us discuss the third quality, selfishness. The monk folded his hands and gazed at Thomas. The third quality that doesn't deserve respect is selfishness, he said. A selfish person prioritizes their own needs and desires above all else, often at the expense of others. This behavior not only harms those around them, but also leads to loneliness and isolation. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. I've met people like that. They always take but never give. Eventually, people stop wanting to be around them. The monk smiled. Exactly. Let me share a story. There was once a wealthy landowner named Hideo who had vast fields and abundant harvests. Despite his riches, he never shared his wealth, nor did he help those in need. When the villagers asked for assistance during a famine, he turned them away, saying, I have worked hard for my success. You must do the same. Over time, his greed became his downfall. The villagers, having no choice, left in search of food elsewhere. When misfortune struck Hideo's land, a flood wiping away his crops and fortune, there was no one left to help him. Alone and desperate, he realized too late that had he been generous, others would have gladly come to his aid. Thomas sighed. So, selfishness leads to loneliness. If he had shared even a little, he wouldn't have lost everything. Yes, the monk agreed. True wealth is not measured by what we keep, but by what we give. Selfish people may accumulate riches, but they will always be poor in companionship, love, and respect. Generosity, on the other hand, fosters strong relationships and brings true fulfillment. The monk took a sip of tea and continued. There is a balance in life. Caring for oneself is important, but it should never come at the cost of others. Well-being. A compassionate heart benefits not just the receiver, but also the giver. Acts of kindness strengthen the bonds of community and nourish the soul. Thomas reflected on his own life. I have always believed that helping others brings happiness, but sometimes people take advantage of kindness. How do we protect ourselves from that? The monk nodded. Wisdom must accompany generosity. Giving blindly can lead to harm, but giving wisely brings true benefit. One must learn to discern between those in genuine need and those who seek only to exploit. A kind heart should never be a foolish one. Thomas smiled. That makes sense. Selfishness isolates, but generosity connects. I see now that giving is not just about helping others. It's about building meaningful relationships and a fulfilling life. The monk returned the smile. Exactly. Now, let us discuss the fourth quality, cruelty. The monk folded his hands and gazed at Thomas. The fourth quality that does not deserve respect is cruelty, he said. A cruel person derives satisfaction from causing pain to others, whether physically, emotionally, or mentally. Such a person lacks compassion and empathy, creating suffering wherever they go. Thomas frowned. I've seen cruelty take many forms. Some people inflict harm openly, while others do it subtly, with words or actions meant to wound. Why do people choose to be cruel? The monk nodded. Cruelty often stems from insecurity, fear, or a deep-seated desire for control. Some believe that by hurting others, they can elevate themselves or shield their own weaknesses. Let me tell you a story. He took a sip of tea before continuing. There was once a warlord named Daisuke. He ruled his land with an iron fist, punishing even the smallest mistakes with extreme severity. His soldiers feared him, and his people despised him. He believed that cruelty made him strong and unquestioned. One day, a wise old man approached Daisuke and said, "Great ruler, your people obey you, but they do not respect you. They act out of fear, not loyalty." Daisuke scoffed, believing fear to be a greater tool than respect. But as time passed, he found himself alone. His closest advisors abandoned him, his soldiers defected, and his once loyal subjects rejoiced at his downfall. In the end, his cruelty left him with nothing but his own misery. Thomas shook his head. So, cruelty isolates a person in the end. Yes, the monk replied. People may fear the cruel, but they will never respect or love them. True strength lies in kindness, not in inflicting harm. A compassionate leader earns loyalty, while a cruel one breeds resentment and betrayal. Thomas sighed. It's tragic, really. Some people never realize the damage they cause until it's too late. The monk gave a solemn nod. Cruelty is a poison that erodes the soul. The more one indulges in it, the emptier they become. But kindness, even in small measures, can heal wounds and build bridges. Thomas took a deep breath. I see now. Strength isn't about instilling fear. It's about fostering respect and understanding. The monk smiled. Precisely. And now, let us discuss the fifth quality, laziness. The monk folded his hands and gazed at Thomas. The fifth quality that does not deserve respect is laziness, he said. Laziness is the refusal to put in effort, to improve oneself or to contribute to the world. It is a silent thief that robs a person of their potential. Thomas frowned. I have seen people waste their lives doing nothing, always making excuses. But sometimes rest is necessary. How do we differentiate between needed rest and laziness? The monk nodded thoughtfully. Rest is important, but laziness is different. Let me share a story with you. He took a deep breath before continuing. There was once a young man named Haru who lived in a small village. He was intelligent and talented, but he preferred idleness over effort. While others worked hard in the fields or honed their skills, Haru spent his days lounging in the shade, making excuses for why he couldn't work. He would say, "There's always tomorrow," or "Someone else will do it." Years passed, and Haru remained stagnant, while his peers became skilled craftsmen, farmers, and scholars. One day, a great famine struck the village. Those who had worked hard had reserves of food, while Haru had nothing. He went from house to house begging for help, but many turned him away, saying, "You had the same chances as us, but you chose idleness over preparation." Haru realized too late that his laziness had left him unprepared for life's hardships. Had he put in effort when he had the chance, he would not have suffered when difficulties arose. Thomas sighed. So laziness not only prevents personal growth, but also leaves a person vulnerable when life becomes difficult. Yes, the monk affirmed, hard work builds resilience and strength. Those who embrace effort and perseverance are prepared for challenges, while those who succumb to laziness find themselves helpless when adversity strikes. The monk took another sip of tea. It is important to rest when needed, but rest should not turn into avoidance. A person who is diligent finds joy in their work, while a lazy person lives in regret. Thomas nodded. I see now. Effort shapes our future, while laziness steals our opportunities. The monk smiled. Precisely. And now let us discuss the sixth quality, closed-mindedness. The monk folded his hands and gazed at Thomas. The sixth quality that does not deserve respect is closed-mindedness, he said. A closed mind resists change, rejects new ideas, and refuses to listen to different perspectives. This stubbornness limits growth and creates barriers between people. Thomas nodded. I've met people like that. No matter what you say, they refuse to consider another point of view. It's frustrating. The monk smiled. Let me share a story with you. He took a deep breath before continuing. There was once an elder named Sato who lived in a village. He was known for his wisdom, but he also believed that his way of thinking was the only correct way. When young, farmers introduced new techniques to improve crop yield. Sato dismissed them, saying, "This is not how we've done things for generations." When travelers shared stories of faraway lands, he scoffed, believing his village was superior to all others. As years passed, the village faced hardships. The old methods no longer worked, and other villages thrived using modern techniques. Yet Sato refused to change. His once respected voice became ignored, and his influence faded. The people who embraced new ideas found prosperity, while Sato, stuck in his ways, was left behind. Thomas sighed. So, refusing to learn and adapt can cause stagnation. Yes, the monk affirmed. An open mind is like a fertile field, ready to accept new seeds of knowledge. A closed mind, however, is barren, incapable of growth. True wisdom comes not from knowing everything, but from the willingness to learn. The monk took a sip of tea before continuing. Many people fear change because it challenges their beliefs, but the world is always evolving. Those who accept new ideas and listen to others grow wiser and stronger. Those who reject different viewpoints out of stubbornness isolate themselves. Thomas thought for a moment. It makes sense. Being open-minded doesn't mean accepting everything blindly, but at least considering new perspectives. The monk smiled. Exactly. An open mind discerns wisely, while a closed mind remains trapped in ignorance. Thomas nodded slowly. I see, now. Keeping an open mind leads to growth, while closed-mindedness leads to stagnation. The monk placed his cup down. And now, let us discuss the seventh and final quality, envy. The monk folded his hands and gazed at Thomas. The seventh and final quality that does not deserve respect is envy, he said. Envy is the poison that clouds the heart, making a person resentful of the success and happiness of others. It fosters bitterness, distances relationships, and blinds a person to their own blessings. Thomas sighed. I've felt envious before. Seeing others succeed while I struggled made me feel inadequate. I couldn't understand why life seemed unfair. The monk nodded. Let me share a story with you. He took a deep breath before continuing. There was once a craftsman named Hiro who made beautiful furniture. His work was admired by many, but he was never satisfied. When another craftsman in the village gained recognition for his skill, Hiro became consumed with jealousy. Instead of refining his craft, he spent his days speaking ill of his rival, hoping to tarnish his reputation. Over time, customers stopped coming to Hiro, not because his work was inferior, but because his bitterness made him unpleasant to be around. His rival, however, remained focused on his craft and continued to grow in skill and reputation. Hiro, trapped in his envy, was left with nothing but regret. Thomas frowned. So envy distracts us from our own growth. Instead of improving, we waste time resenting others. Yes, the monk affirmed. Envy shifts our focus from gratitude to discontent. A person consumed by envy sees only what they lack, never appreciating what they have. But those who celebrate the success of others invite inspiration and positivity into their lives. The monk took a sip of tea before continuing. Life is not a competition. Each person has their own journey, their own struggles, and their own victories. When we compare ourselves to others with envy, we lose sight of our own path. Instead of wasting energy on resentment, we should channel it into self-improvement and kindness. Thomas thought for a moment. It's true. The happiest moments in my life were when I felt content with what I had, rather than longing for what others possessed. The monk smiled. Exactly. True happiness comes from within, not from measuring oneself against others. A heart free from envy is a heart at peace. Thomas exhaled, feeling lighter. I understand now. Envy only harms the one who holds on to it. Letting go of envy means embracing gratitude and self-growth. The monk nodded. Yes. Now, my friend, you have learned the 7 qualities that do not deserve respect. With this knowledge, may you walk a path of wisdom, compassion, and peace. The monk folded his hands and gazed at Thomas. Now, my friend, you have learned the 7 qualities that do not deserve respect. With this knowledge, may you walk a path of wisdom, compassion, and peace. Thomas sat in quiet reflection, letting the weight of the teachings settle in his heart. He had come to the monastery burdened by doubt and frustration, but now he felt a newfound clarity. He realized that respect should not be given blindly. It should be earned through virtues like kindness, humility, and honesty. The monk continued, "You see, Thomas, life is a journey of choices. Every day we decide what kind of person we want to be. We can choose to embrace wisdom or fall into the traps of arrogance, dishonesty, selfishness, cruelty, laziness, closed-mindedness, and envy. By rejecting these qualities in ourselves and others, we create a world filled with respect, understanding, and harmony." Thomas nodded slowly. "I understand now. To surround myself with goodness, I must first embody it." The monk smiled warmly. "Precisely. Respect is not something demanded, it is something inspired. When you live with integrity, others will see your light and be drawn to it." As the sun began to set over the monastery, Thomas felt a sense of renewal. The burdens he had carried into the monastery no longer felt as heavy. He stood up, bowed deeply to the monk, and said, "Thank you, Master. Your wisdom has given me a new perspective." The monk inclined his head. "Go forth with an open heart, and may your path be one of wisdom and peace." With that, Thomas turned and made his way down the winding path, carrying with him not only the lessons of the monk, but a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the journey of self-improvement was never ending, but now he had the guidance he needed to walk it with strength and clarity. The wind whispered through the trees as if carrying the echoes of wisdom through the valley. And as Thomas disappeared into the horizon, the monk returned to his tea, knowing that another soul had been touched by the light of understanding.